Hi, I'm Chef Alan Tetreault with Global Sugar Art, and today I'm going to show you how to make hydrangeas. We're going to make single blossom hydrangeas that you can put on the side of a cake like this, and we're also going to wire some hydrangeas, and I'll show you how to put them together in a bunch. Hydrangeas have become a very popular flower in weddings all over the world, and the new cultivars like the Limelight, which have sort of a lime greenish center and a little bit of pink blush on the outside, are just spectacular, especially for the colors this year. You'll also find purples and blues and ivories and soft yellows. There are many different colors of hydrangeas out there, and there are other kinds of hydrangeas like a lace cap as well, where there are more of the little seed pods or the blossom heads in the center of it. So to get started, I'm going to be using my new hydrangea flower set. It includes a silicone mold and 2 cutters. When you receive the silicone mold, you just take it apart, and what I've done is I put it back together and I just used a pen and I made a line on one side. And the only reason I'm doing that is so that when I go to match these up, I know exactly how it goes together. It just makes the whole process a little easier. I'm going to be using gum paste today, and I highly recommend the Choco Pan gum paste. Not only does it roll very thin, it's very strong, but I find that even when it dries, the flowers are very strong, and you break very few of them when you're actually working with the flowers after they've dried. So to begin, I've rolled out some paste, and I've got this all ready to go. And this is about a number 5 on the Atlas pasta machine if you're using that. You don't want to get it too thin, especially when you're using a silicone veiner, because you can push right through it. So make sure that it's got a little bit of cornstarch on both sides. We'll start with a small one. Just cut out a few of these. There. Put that back under. Now, to vein these, you will use the silicone mold, and I like to put a little bit of cornstarch on both sides, and then just flip them over and tap any excess off. And then on the part that is concave, you're going to set the blossom on there, right in the center. And then find where your 2 lines are, put the top on. Now don't push in the center. If you push in the center, you're going to thin the center so much that if you want to wire these, they'll break apart. So I only press on the outside 4 edges, but not in the center. And then you should be able to lift that right out. And that blossom is almost finished. Now there are 2 ways you can dry these. You can use a piece of foil that you've just crumpled up and just lay them in there, or you can use a little paint tray. So we'll do a larger one here as well. Just set the blossom in the middle. I'm going to line up the 2 lines on the outside. Push on the outside edges, and then that comes right out. And you can put that right in a little paint tray. Okay, to make the center of the flower, I'm going to take a very small piece of gum paste and just in the palm of your hand, roll it into a little ball, and then use a very small paintbrush and a little bit of glue or water. Put a little bit in the center of your flower, and then just drop that little ball in. Then you can take a knife or a little spatula, and you want to make it like an X right across the top of that. And as you make that X, you're actually pushing that little ball down into the glue, so it'll stay right there. And that's all there is to making these. Now, you don't see the veining really well right now, but when these dry, we're going to color them, and then you'll really see the detail on the veining. And again, just a little X. And then I would just let those dry. Probably overnight, depending on the humidity in your area, but you want to make sure they're thoroughly dry before you dust them, and then we'll attach them to the cake. So now I want to go on and I want to show you how to make a wired hydrangea. I'm going to start with a piece of number 26 gauge wire, and I'm going to use a pair of pliers, and I'm just going to bend over a very small hook at the end. And I want that kind of tight, like a little shepherd's hook. So it's a very, very tiny hook. I'm going to take a small piece of paste, dip the wire in some glue, and then put it through the paste and bring it up. And I find if you dip your fingers a little bit in some cornstarch, this is easier to do. Just roll that around and part way down the wire, maybe about 1/4 to 1/2 inch. And I like to make just sort of a little ball at the top if I can. Just think of like a Q-tip or a cotton swab. And then the same, since this is the center of your flower, it's going to have the same finish at the top, which is just basically a little cross going in one in each direction. And then you can just hang those upside down to dry. And that's the center of the flower. I'm just going to hang that upside down. Now, when you look at the buds on the cake, they're the same thing that I just made, but we are not going to add a flower to them. So when you're making a bunch of hydrangeas and you want to actually make them in bunches and you want these little flower buds, you just would go no further than that. You would just make the little cross on them, let those dry, and then dust them whatever color you wanted. But we're going to go a step further and we're going to actually make a flower. So I've got my mold, put a little bit of cornstarch, and put the petals in, line up my 2 lines, press on the outside edge, and just pop that out. Okay, I'm going to take the one that I just made. I'm going to add a little bit of glue, just a little spot of glue in the middle of the flower. And then I'm going to put the wire right through the center and pull it up through. And then I'm going to turn that upside down, and I'm just pinching that all together with my fingers and just bringing that down the wire so the back of the flower is seamless and the center is now in the middle. Now the best thing to do from here is just hang them upside down. You can fold them in a little bit. You can make them whatever shape that you'd like, and then just hang this upside down and leave them to dry thoroughly. If you want to go back after 10 or 15 minutes and adjust the petals a little bit in whatever direction you'd like, you can do that. But when they're first made, just leave them alone and let them dry a little bit before you try to shape them anymore. So I'm going to clean up my area, and we're going to come back and I'm going to show you how to color the hydrangeas and then how to attach them to a cake and how to make a little bouquet with them. Our flowers are dried and we're ready to color them now. And for this look, I'm using 3 different colors. I'm using a crystal color called Orchid Green. I'm using one of the Global Sugar Art Lime Green and the Global Sugar Art Cosmos Pink. But like I said earlier, hydrangeas come in many colors and you can use whatever colors that fit your cake. So what I like to do, start with a simple blossom, hold them in your hand. Don't try to brush them when they're down on a board like this, unless you're using a sponge pad, because they'll break very easily. It's much better to just cup them in your hand. So I like to start with the pale green first, and I'm just going to brush mostly the center and a little bit toward the outside, and then I'm going to use the lime green and just sort of brighten up the center of that flower, and then a little bit of pink just on the outside of the petals. Now for the cake, to my left here, because they're up against the side of the cake, I don't need to do the backs of them. But if you're going to wire them and you think the backs are going to show, then you would also color the back of the blossom. So there's one done. Let's see if I can get that to show. Now for the large wired one, done the exact same way. Start with a little bit of the paler green, and then the lime green, and a little bit of pink. It's just a little blush of color on the outside. Sometimes I'll go back over and just sort of blend the colors together. And that's all there is to it. Now to attach these to the cake, I'm going to use a little piece of gum paste. And we'll bring the cake over here. And I purposely didn't do the whole thing so you could see how they're attached. So I'm going to take a little teeny ball of gum paste. I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to very, very lightly wet the back of the blossom and put on that piece of paste, and then wet it again. And then decide where your blossom's going to go and just press in the cake. And that's all there is to it. You can just, I went all the way around the bottom first, and then I worked my way up the layers. And I used both the small and the large on this cake, so that you get just a different look. Some of the big ones are larger and they stick out more, and they just add a more natural feel to the cake rather than using all the same size. When you have wired hydrangeas, I've got a couple all dusted and ready to go. Whoops. Okay. To make a spray, I'm going to start with my centers. I've got some all colored. Oops. And I'm actually going to make those a little more lime. So I'm going to make a little group of centers, and then I'm going to start adding blossoms just below the height of the centers. And again, use different sizes. If you're not prone to making your own flowers, or you don't have time, we also have a really, really beautiful selection of pre-made hydrangeas on our website. I'll use a smaller one there. You can buy the blossoms individually, and you can color them yourself, or we have them all colored. And you can actually buy the bouquets just like this. And then after you have a group of them together, you're going to tape them together. I'm going to use half-width floral tape. And get up as far as you can get under the blossoms without breaking them, and just tape down. There. And of course you can cut that tail any way you need to. Then what I like to do is use a little pair of pliers and sort of pull these out so that I can get all the blossoms sort of facing upward and outward. And then just move those little buds in different positions so they're not all in a cluster in the center. Oh, that one doesn't want to move. There we go. Okay. And that's basically how you do the spray. And that's how I did this one here, and I just added a hydrangea leaf. And then I would just set that on the side of the cake. For this cake, because this is a very small 8 and 6 inch or 8 and 5 inch layer, I made a very small bouquet. Just quickly on this cake, this was covered with a lime colored, or excuse me, not a lime, a spring green colored fondant. And that is using the Alan Tetreault brand of the spring green. And that's a very popular color this summer. For the bottom tier, I airbrushed the fondant with the Alan Tetreault line of airbrush colors, and this is the Shimmer Pearl. And I just did it very slowly, very small, or not small, very thin coats. And I let it dry, and then I redid it 3 or 4 times just to get a nice pearlized look to that cake. And then I just made the hydrangeas, and I just glued them on with a little ball of gum paste, and it was a very, very easy cake to make. Just to recap today, we used the Alan Tetreault Hydrangea Flower Blossom Set. I used some Choco Pan gum paste, or any good gum paste will work. The cake was done with the Alan Tetreault Spring Green and some fondant, and I used the Airbrush Pearl. You need some 26 gauge wire, some floral tape, and then I used Crystal Colors Orchid Green, Global Sugar Art Lime Green, and Cosmos Pink. But then again, you can use whatever colors that you need for your cake. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching, and all our products are available at globalsugarart.com. Have a great day.